Siobhan. Gabriella. Good, we got you. We got you. Try your next seat here. Eat it quickly. You ever see like Bugs Bunny? It's like 3 bites. 1, 2, 3, done. Take it out. You choke and see.
Hello, folks. Welcome, Fremd High School. We are exactly halfway through Writers Week. If you have liked what you have seen, let's make some noise. I have 3 different people to thank, or groups to thank, so I want you to get ready to make some noise for them too. First, let's thank the boosters who have generously given us funds to invite writers here. So let's make some noise for them. I want to thank the tech crew up there. Thank you for the lights and the sound. You are appreciated. And lastly, I want to thank all of you out in the seats, because if you didn't appreciate what goes on up here, we couldn't do it. And it's been very inspirational to me over the last 21 years for my writing, and I appreciate you being here and being interested so that we can keep doing it. So big hand to you guys. Today's presenter is Mark Oshiro. Yeah, all right. Mark writes many things, including young adult books. Here are some of their titles: Anger is a Gift, Each of Us a Desert, The Insiders, You Only Live Once, David Bravo. And if you are a fan of the Percy Jackson series, do we have any Percy Jackson fans here? Yeah? Okay, good. Then you'll be excited to hear that Mark Oshiro co-authored an upcoming book with Rick Riordan. Yeah, how cool is that? So Mark also wittily reviews books and television shows on his website. You can check these out by going to their website, markoshiro.com. I'm going to get off the stage so you can give a big hand for Mark Oshiro.
I'm not going to stand in one place. I'm gay. We don't do this. Okay. Thank you to my one fan, by the way, whoever yelled. Thank you. 2 fans, apparently. Hi, everyone. Interesting fact. How many of you saw me here in 2020? Thank you. That was my last school visit before COVID. So it is kind of cool that I get to come back and be here with all of you. I haven't seen human beings in a really long time. So I'm glad to see all of your faces. Well, half of your faces. That's what my face looks like, by the way, if you're curious. It's over there. So here's how this is going to work. I have a little presentation for you. It's got some visuals. You are allowed to laugh at anything on the screen, including some of the photos of me as a child I'm about to show you. There is also a secret in here that has not been released. So I'm going to ask that you do not film this presentation because I will probably get fired. So I just wanted to give you all something as a thanks that is going to be announced, I think, later this week or next week. But anyway, my name is Mark Oshiro. I am a young adult and middle grade author. This is my life. This is my career. This is what I do for a living. And it is really cool to come and get to speak to all of you about what it is like to be an author and how I have made writing my career. And so I actually want to back up a little bit and start with what I was like as a kid, because I think this question actually answers a lot of why I write what I write. So, look how cute I am. Oh, look at that. That's me and my identical twin brother. I have an identical twin. He lives in Maryland. He is a teacher. Oh, if only I could travel to time and tell this child the world is going to break you. I grew up in a little bit in Boise, Idaho, but I mostly grew up in Riverside, California. It is a desert community about 100 miles east of Los Angeles and 100 miles east of everything cool in California. People are always like, oh, you grew up in California, that's great, beaches. I was like, oh no, we didn't have beaches. We had like toxic sludge puddles and racism. It was great, a great place to grow up. I was not the outgoing 5 jokes every 5 seconds person that I am now. I was actually a very shy bookworm. You could not get me to talk. Up until I was about 15 or 16 years old, you could not get me on a stage speaking to anyone. I hated it. I didn't like anything but reading. Reading was the thing that I was good at, the thing that I liked doing, and it eventually turned into being a writer. So when I was a kid, I think of these 3 books, series, authors, or whatnot, as sort of the pivotal things that I experienced that helped shape me as a writer. I loved everything Beverly Cleary. In particular, I loved Ramona Quimby as a character because she was so funny to me and also kind of annoying. And I like that about her. I like that some kids would read books with her as the main character and be irritated by her, because I kind of felt like this annoying, irritating kid. And so I related a lot to her stories. I was a huge fan of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, in particular that entire series by C.S. Lewis. I loved the sensation of reading a book in which it could transport you to a magical world, but then that was also the part of the story, going through the wardrobe and being able to access a magical, fantastic world. I was also of the age that the Goosebumps books came out in real time when I was a kid. That first book, whose name I can't remember right now, that's right there in the bottom corner, that book came out, I think I was 7 years old. So I was the prime age to read Goosebumps. It helped also foster my love of horror. It is probably my favorite genre to read and write and to watch and whatnot. I will also say that while I did read these, the other thing I read at age 8 was Stephen King's It. Don't do that, for the record, if you're 8 years old. That is not an 8-year-old child book. I've never shown this photo publicly. Who wants to guess how old I am? in that photo. This is at a dance at a public school. Oh boy, this is gonna be fun. This person said 17. Anyone else want to hazard a guess?
50.
Nope.
60.
Lower. 13 years old. Why do I look like a full-grown man in this photo? Why do I, we're going back here. Okay, we're gonna do this. I don't care. Why do I look like I do your parents' taxes? Like, what is happening here? I'm 13 years old. One of the reasons I write a lot about being an outsider and write a lot about being bullied, in particular when I write middle grade, more so than young adult fiction. One of the reasons I was bullied is I look like a full-grown man as a very young person. You can also tell that I went to an extremely conservative Christian school district school. Look at how chaste we all look. Also, is anyone surprised that I'm gay looking at this photo? No one at all. What is, oh, I look so terrified. Anyway, I put this in here in particular because I do like talking about that, is that I was this very shy, very strange kid who tended to have, most of my friends were girls in middle school, and it sort of changed in high school as I came into who I was and was able to have long-lasting friendships with some of the boys in school. But I feel like this period of time when I was in middle school was very formative for my identity. I'm going to jump ahead real quick, because this is me as a teenager. I am 18 years old. Look at, what is going on? 13, 18, I don't know, man. These are most of my friends from cross-country and track. I did cross-country and track in high school. I love these people. This is where I feel like I started to become this person, is I started to become more confident. I was able to actually speak in public. And I also, one big thing that I am very thankful for is I got to sort of develop my taste in art at this time. A lot of the people in this photograph, we listened to sort of the weirdest music. We were constantly trading horror movies, the things that we couldn't find. Like, we would go to when you had to go to video stores at the time, we would go to the ones all the way across town to find the rare movies that no one else was talking about. And I'm so thankful to these people because it helped develop what my sense of taste was as I became a writer. By the way, this is me and my twin brother as adults. Look at that. We're great. Okay, the end. We're gonna move on. So why do I write what I write? I have 3 books out in the world. In the next year-ish, I'll have 7, oh, that's a lot to say, 7 books out in the world. And I would say over the course of those books, as they come out, as you read them, there does seem to be some common themes and some things that I do like to write about. And so I often get asked this question, though. Why is the stuff you write so dark? And I put dark in quotes up there on purpose, because I don't know that that's necessarily how I would designate my own writing. But it is true that I do tend to write about teenagers experiencing immense hardships. Anger is a Gift is a book about police violence and structural racism in a high school. Each of Us a Desert is a very gnarly, sometimes gory, sometimes terrifying journey across a desert, and it's about religious dogma and personal acceptance. The Insiders, as silly as that book is, even though it's for a younger audience, it deals with the feelings of isolation that come from bullying, particularly when an adult does not believe you. Much of what I write is based on things that I have experienced. Anger is a Gift is based on 2 decades of being an activist. I'm still doing activism. At the time that I wrote it, started doing activism as a teenager and was heavily involved in it throughout my 20s. It is also based on my own experiences with police brutality. Each of Us a Desert is a metaphor for what it was like to grow up near the desert while having to be in the closet. And even though that is a fantasy book, so much of that experience is still in that. The Insiders is based on a negative interaction with a counselor that I had in middle school who blamed my bullying on me because she said I acted wrong and I deserved to be treated the way that I was treated. So I had a very difficult upbringing, a really, really challenging childhood. So I think there is value in stories about, in writing stories about kids who face hardships, and this is the important one for me, is surviving them. I often think of my fiction as I am writing books with lights at the end of the tunnel. What is the thing that this character overcomes, and how do they reach the end of their journey and still feel hope? Realistic hope. Sometimes people say that my endings feel a little cynical, but I personally see them as hopeful. So I dealt with things growing up as a kid, like child abuse, racism, a whole lot of homophobia where I lived. And so it has always felt unfair to me when adults talk about my books this way, when they talk about how they're too dark for kids. I'm sure many of you have seen, you mentioned it too with Mouse, what's going on with Mouse. There are so many books being banned in the United States, in different schools across the country right now. I am at 370 some schools have banned my books now. Usually anger is a gift. Each of Us a Desert are starting to get banned a lot more. The Insiders got banned 1 week after it came out, and I was like, wow, y'all don't wait to be bigots. Good for you, I guess. Commit to that. So here's the thing for me. I write what I write because it is based in a truth. It is based on what I have gone through and what I wished I had had when I was that age. And so it has always felt unfair the way that adults deal and engage with this idea of book banning, because they constantly talk about wanting to protect children. But what happens when you do not allow books like mine, or books like George M. Johnson's, or Alex London's, or Case and Callender's, when you don't allow those books to be read, and I'm not saying that everyone has to read a book and everyone has to like every single book, but when you do not allow them to exist in a space for children to find them on their own, what you are saying is, I wish you, and in this case, we'll talk about me, I wish you didn't exist and people couldn't find you. I could not opt out of experiencing child abuse. I could not opt out of experiencing racism. I surely could not opt out of experiencing homophobia as a kid. I couldn't close that book, put it on the shelf, and then suddenly not have to deal with that world. I had to deal with that every day. And then on top of it, to have an adult say, you can't read this book because there's a queer character in it, there's a bisexual character in it, and we want to protect you, all I think is, no, you just don't actually want to see me. You want to acknowledge me. You would prefer that I don't exist. And so for me, it's a fraud from the very beginning. As soon as any parent says, I want to protect a child, I'm like, no, you don't, because you don't actually care to protect children like me. So I proudly write what I write. I've always sort of assumed my books were going to get banned. I didn't expect on this level. But I didn't get my starting initially writing novels. I have been writing my whole career, but before I was a novelist, I actually was a journalist. I'm very proud of this photo. I took this photo. If you happen to know who this is, it's a big deal that I got to do this. I spent 11 years as a journalist. I initially got started writing in Los Angeles, mostly about the music industry. And it was not what I planned. When growing up, I was like, I want a book with my name on my cover. That is the goal of my life. That is the career that I want to have. And it didn't end up that way because I ended up writing nonfiction first. Mostly articles about music, the music industry, how touring musicians were dealing with the fact that most everything was turning into online sales, and a lot of bands didn't know what they were doing. Didn't know what they were doing. They didn't know how they were going to keep doing what they were doing when people weren't going into record stores as much. And so I spent a long time writing nonfiction. And I tell you all this because I believe that is a huge influence why my first book, what it was. So my first book, Anger is a Gift, came out in May of 2018. I don't think I would have been able to write a contemporary novel if I had not spent so much time writing about the real world. And I feel that writing contemporary fiction is only a hair's breadth away from writing nonfiction about the world. This very much, in a lot of ways, even though on a prose level there is certainly liberties that I take, I do feel like this has a lot of similarity to the stuff that I was writing when I was a journalist. So Anger is a Gift came out in 2018. It is about a group of students. The main character, Moss Jeffries Jr., is on the cover, and it's about a group of students who stage a protest walkout at their high school when one of their friends is injured by a newly installed metal detector. It is partially based on my high school experience as well as a bunch of students that I met in West Oakland when I was living in Oakland and was interacting with them as a nonfiction writer and getting to see firsthand what sort of environment they were living in and what sort of environment was present at their school, including metal detectors, including resource officers. And so this book is sort of an amalgamation of two truths, the truths that I live and the things that I experienced, but then also writing in conversation with these kids, and these kids who I was meeting with all the time, and who were telling me what their experience was like. So That's the paperback cover if you see it. Those are the same book, they're not different. But you might like Anger is a Gift if you are more into modern and contemporary stories. This is very much a social justice narrative that is dealing with things like structural violence and structural racism, as well as the very personal and emotional effects of police brutality. I do warn people, this is a heartbreaking book. This is not easy. I will say that. I don't like people saying that this book is dark, because I feel like that doesn't actually tell you what it's about. But I do tell people this is a heartbreaking book. It is sometimes very, very difficult to read. But on a positive note, it is very much also about the power of friendship. I wrote the friend group that I wish that I had had when I was younger, particularly a friend group that understood my struggle and understood my experience. And so there is levity, there is happiness, there is joy in this book. My second book, Each of Us a Desert, is a secondary fantasy. If you're not familiar with that term, and you just know what fantasy is, secondary fantasy is just a way of saying that the world in this book is entirely made up. It is not set in our world. It would be something like Lord of the Rings, whereas something like the Marvel films are more technically fantasy, but they're more contemporary fantasy, which is set in our world. So this is not, I got to invent an entire world for this book. So Each of Us a Desert is about a 16-year-old girl named Xochitl who is a cuentista. A cuentista is a person who has the magical ability to pull stories out of people's bodies. And she lives in a village where she is told that every day she has to cleanse people of all the things that they've done wrong to one another, or else her God will get angry at them and smite them. And they have this long-standing myth of this is why our village is out in the middle of nowhere and we don't talk to anyone, is because your God killed everyone. There's no one else out there. And one day, a stranger comes into her town and starts to unravel her understanding of who she is. And this is very much, I talked about this earlier, it is a fantastical metaphor for what it felt like to be isolated as a teenager and to feel like everything cool was happening in the outside world and not near you. I am very proud of this book. A lot of authors, when they get asked what is their favorite book, they say, oh, they're all my children. I can't pick. I'm picking this child. I love this child. This is my favorite book. I'm so proud of what I pulled off in it. So you might like this if you were into things like enemies to lovers. If you're not familiar, that is a fan fiction term, but it describes a specific trope, which is when two people hate each other, and then slowly come to enjoy one another's presence over the course of a story. Epic journeys across unknown lands, if you were into those kind of things. Poetic, evocative language. This book literally does not read anything like Anger is a Gift. I'm also very proud of that. If you were into stories with, and this is mostly a quote, plot twists that make you want to fight me in the streets. I did a school visit about 2 weeks after Anger is a Gift, Each of Us a Desert came out. I walked into this classroom, this kid raised their hand, and I was like, I haven't even started. She was like, why are you like this? I was like, you're gonna have to be specific. I am mentally ill. There's a lot of things wrong with me. I don't know what you're talking about. And she was like, why would you do this? What's your address? And I was like, what? And she was like, I'll fight you outside your house. And I was like, okay, cool. Cool. But by the way, as an author, like 100% best possible reaction ever. If people are like, I would like to physically harm you for what you did to me, I'm like, all right, let's go. So my third book came out last year. It is called The Insiders. It is my first middle grade novel, so that means this is intended for a younger audience, though I did not really dilute my storytelling in this. I still think it is just as thorny and difficult as some of my other books, but this one is definitely a lot sillier. Do I have a slide describing what this book is? I do. I wrote this last night. I don't remember anything. So this came out last year. It is my middle grade debut. The Insiders follow the story of Hector Munoz, a 12-year-old kid who is forced to move far from home because of his mother's new job. So he moves from a very big city, San Francisco, to the suburbs of Sacramento, where if you don't know geographically, it is about 120 miles away. Now that I've said that out loud, I'm like, oh, that's kind of like me growing up in Riverside. I didn't really process that. Anyway, so at his new school, he discovers that all the things he loved are seen as strange and weird, so much so that he starts being bullied. And in particular, he was an out kid at his school in San Francisco, and he comes to this school and has to go back in the closet. Except this closet, which I call the room, is magical. And I'm going to go back to this cover while I talk about this. The Insiders is based on the very first book that I ever wrote when I was 19 years old. I was a freshman in college, and I was convinced this book was going to change the world. It was going to be published in every language available on the planet, and maybe some that didn't even exist yet. I don't know. I had all these pie-in-the-sky ideas, and I wrote this book, and I sent it to agents and editors at the same time, because I didn't know how the publishing industry worked. And it was rejected by 3 people and ignored by the rest. And I have held onto it all these years, and a few years back, I reread it, and there was still a good idea in there. And with the wisdom that I had had of already writing 2 books, I decided to rewrite it, and it became this book. So I'm telling you all of this to tell you to please save your old drafts. I was 19 years old when I wrote this, and now here I am, 38 years old, half my life, like twice the age I was, and it got published. And I'm very proud of this book. And so this book is about a weird magical closet, a janitor's closet that allows this kid to meet with the other 2 kids on the cover, and they don't know why. And then this room starts forcing them to solve one another's problems. It's very weird and wacky and chaotic, and I'm super, super proud of it. I'm proud of everything that I've done. So I had 2 more things to share with you, and then I would love to turn it over to you and answer questions about anything I've talked about, or really anything. You want to be like, Mark, have you played the new Pokemon game? Yes, it's my whole life. What do I do? I get this question all the time when I do school visits. What do you actually do all day besides play Pokemon? I play Pokemon so much. Life as an author is interesting, and I like sort of peeling back the curtain on this because I would love it if everyone could be an author and more people could pursue their career. So what do I do all day? I despair. I play Plants vs. Zombies 2 on my phone all the time. Love that game. I forget how all letters and words work. This was me yesterday. I'm on deadline. We're going to talk about what I'm on deadline for. I have moments during the day where my friends just know, oh, we can't talk to Mark right now. Mark has used every word in their head, and they can't speak. Someone asked me what my name was at a grocery store, and I looked at them and said, Tim? With a question mark at the end. Tim? I don't know. So that was my day. I also send memes and TikToks to all my friends instead of writing. So when I'm not doing those things, I do actually have a sort of schedule. And so here are sort of the 3 things that I want to talk about, is sort of give you a little dose of realism and sort of expectations of what it's like to be a professional author, but also explain how great it is. So it is true, I basically have a job where I don't really have a boss in any traditional sense. It is also true that I don't have a schedule, like a 9 to 5. I can work whenever I want. I can do things like come and visit all of you and still work around the trip. I have taken pseudo vacations. Please don't tell the IRS that. I've taken pseudo vacations where I'm writing in like a wonderful, beautiful location where it is still work, but I get to be in nice, wonderful places. But these things are basically what sort of rule my life on a weekly basis. So first of all, emails. And I tell you this because I came up at an age where that was not a part of instruction. Like, hey, when you become a professional person, you're gonna have to answer a lot of emails. As an author, I get between 300 and 500 emails a day. Thank you for that reaction, one person. Was that also my only fan in here? No, I'm kidding. Okay. It's a lot, and a lot of emails. I get emails from my publisher, from my publicist, from my agent, from readers, from people wanting to book me for events. And every day, and usually my schedule is I wake up in the morning, I do my workout, and I like to do a physical workout because it's when I brainstorm, when I think about what I have to work on during the day. After that, and usually while I'm eating breakfast, I go through and I have to very quickly decide, okay, these are all garbage, I can throw all these away. These I need to answer in the next hour or someone's gonna be very angry at me. And these I can put off until later when I need like a break from writing or whatnot. And I have to be able to recognize what those emails are. Oftentimes it's for things that are like, I'll use this, Writer's Week, like getting the email from Russell. Like as soon as I saw that, I'm like, oh, I gotta answer that now because I want this to happen again. And I was hoping it too. I saw that email and I was like, please invite me back. Please, I wanna come back so bad. So being able to be on top of those things so that I can keep sort of a regular schedule of events so that I can make sure I know my deadlines for all of my projects. And then writing. The vast majority of my day is spent writing. But what I mean by writing is that I'm not sitting down every single day and just writing a new thing. That's not necessarily how it works. I am either in one of these 4 stages with a project. 1, brainstorming. I have an idea. I want to turn this idea into a project. Feel free to ask me more about how I'd use that process, but that is one thing I could be doing. 2, drafting, the actual act of taking the thing that I have brainstormed and outlined and now turning it into the first draft of a short story or a novel. 3, rewriting. I am a messy first drafter. My first drafts are like a flaming pile of garbage in a sea of oil that is also on fire, because that's just how I don't write clean first drafts. I just want to get the story on the page. I wish one day that my second draft was not a complete rewrite of my first draft, but so far with all 7 novels that I have written, They've always been rewrites. This is just how it works. If I become one of those writers who gets it right the first time, that would be great for my time management. But I don't. So generally, I am, and for the record, the thing I'm working on right now that I was working on before I came here this morning is a rewrite. I have to rewrite an entire book. And then the fourth thing is revising and editing, where I finally got the story right, but now we're getting into the granular details. So at any given day, based on what deadline is coming up soonest, that might be the thing that I am working on. And then third, promotion. We are in a pandemic, most stuff is online and virtual, but school visits, book festivals, convention, networking events, I gotta say, all that stuff, best part of being an author. I mean, I love writing, don't get me wrong, and I do enjoy it even when it is very, very hard, but I love this. I love getting to interact with people and talk about writing and talk about my stories. I miss it. I'm so glad I'm here, y'all. You're my only friends. No, okay, anyway. Thanks, I guess. And I get to hang out with my friends. This is my friends Ashley Woodfolk and Leah Johnson, who are also write middle grade and young adult. And getting to be friends with creative people who you admire, especially admire from a distance. And there are people, you know, like I think about my friendship with like Daniel Jose Oder and Daniel Clayton, like people whose work I enjoyed before I ever met them, and then getting to become friends with them. I love that part of my job, because I know so many other people who have jobs, and they hate literally everyone they work with. And I don't. I only hate a handful of people. Don't ask me who they are. All right, finally, last thing. I just want to talk to you a little bit about what's coming next. I have 4 books out in the next 15 months. It's a lot. I'm very excited about it. So my next book out is in September. It is my second middle grade book for HarperCollins. It is called You Only Live Once, David Bravo, out September 20th. It is about a kid named David Bravo whose life begins to unravel when a school presentation forces him to doubt his origins as an adopted kid, which is precisely when a shape-shifting, chaotic being known as a timeline guide shows up in his life with an important message, and she says, David Bravo, I can take you back to one moment in your life, and you can redo it. And we need to do this because the powers that be have decided that your life is on the wrong track. Your life is broken. We're going to fix it. And he's like, cool, I'm 11. I don't know what could be wrong in my life, but sure, let's do it. And it is a book about this kid who redoes a moment in his life, and when he gets returned to the present time, he finds he has broken the world a little. And every time he has to go back earlier and earlier into his life to discover why this weird creature is bothering him all the time, but also what is the mystery of his life that is making her show up. It is the most chaotic, funniest book I've ever written. I love this book so much. The cover just got released a couple weeks ago. Look at that, it is so pretty. And there are so many Easter eggs on this cover. I can't wait till you find out what it's about. So we have that. Here's your secret. Please don't tell anyone that I said this here. I will get fired. Most autobiographical. It is the very scary and messed up. It is probably the most true to life book I've ever written. You're not ready. When my agent read the first draft, he said, people are going to come to your house with pitchforks. They're going to be so mad when they realize what you've done. I'm so excited. In every way, this is the most ambitious book I've ever written. Can I give you a pitch? Probably not, but I'm going to do it anyway. It is about two boys. One is named Luis. Luis is in a religious organization called Reconciliation who believe that they need to save all of the orphans in the world. Oh, can I tell you? Oh, I've never pitched this book, I realize that. I'm doing it right now in my head. And so he believes that he is sacred, because this is what this group believes, that the orphans are the most sacred, beautiful people in the world. And one day, a hiker gets lost, dehydrated, very sunburned in his compound, and starts to reveal things about the outside world, which this Luis character has never seen. He's never left his compound, and he doesn't realize about himself. The other point of view is from the hiker. His name is Manny, and you find out that his sister was stolen by this cult and is actually Luis's sister, and he doesn't know it yet. And so it is the rescue story from his point of view of him trying to get to the cult in order to rescue his sister. That's all I'm going to tell you. Oh, I can't wait for y'all to be so mad at me. It's going to be great. And lastly, Mrs. mentioned earlier, I still can't believe I get to say this sentence out loud. I'm writing the next Percy Jackson book. So it comes out next year in the summer. I'm co-writing it with Rick Riordan. He wrote the whole outline for it. I wrote the first and second draft. He's writing the third draft. It is the first book entirely from the perspective of Nico D'Angelo and Will Solis. And it is the book about, if you are all caught up with Percy Jackson, there's 15 books, but it is basically takes place a few months after, what is that last one called? The Tyrants? Oh, I'm real bad at this. I should know this. I know all these Percy, whatever the last one was. And they go to Tartarus to rescue Bob the Titan. You can ask me questions about this. I will get fired if I answer any of them. So I'll just say it's great. I'm very excited. I would like to leave you with a parting gift, which is I would like to share with all of you. I find it is a lot easier to talk about what it's like being as a writer. I can sit here and tell you all, but instead I would like to visually show you what my emotions are lately, just through images. So I would say these 3 images are how I feel as a writer currently. My whole personality has become Elmo and Rocco, by the way. Like, completely 100%. I am Elmo at any given moment of the day. I also feel like, especially this current revision I'm working on for this book is kicking my ass. It's really hard. It is a very difficult book, so I definitely feel like this all the time. I told you I play Pokemon all the time. Yesterday, my friend, I put this in last night. I shouldn't do this. I'm going to do it anyway. Texted me, was like, hey, how are you doing? How are you feeling about your book? And I just sent this back. I'm going to leave that up while we answer questions, so that you can just imagine this is my monologue in my head as I'm doing this. So we got about 15 minutes or so. I want to hear from all of you. If you have questions about writing, anything that I've talked about, if you have Percy Jackson questions that I will then immediately refer to my lawyer. I don't have a lawyer. That's not a thing. Anyway, let's go. Who wants to break the ice? Be the first one. Okay, in the stripes right here.
Where do you get your ideas? Like, are you inspired mostly by stuff from your own life, or do you try to bring in, like, other current issues?
I forgot how to do I haven't done a Q&A in so long that I'm going to tell you my immediate thought, because who cares? I'm so feral right now. I missed this so much. I am so happy to be here. Oh, I'm so happy. So my immediate thought was, I'm mentally ill. Like, where do I get my ideas? I'm crazy. Hold on, I need some water. I've been talking for like an hour. What just happened over there? Is it because I exposed my face? Oh, I thought you gasped because you were like, he's giving us COVID. Okay, all right. Generally speaking, I'm actually going to quote my friend Danielle Clayton, because we kind of come from the same place in terms of our ideas. Every short story, every book I've ever wrote is me trying to answer a question about something in my life, something I went through, something I witnessed, and the whole book is the book-long answer to that question. I feel like Anger is a Gift is the grain of the idea was wanting to talk about police brutality in a very personal sense and talk about what I went through and sort of really get at the crux of how isolating and lonely it feels. I think, I talked about the origins of Each of Us a Desert as me sort of grappling with my childhood and thinking about being isolated. Where's my phone? But the thing is, I get ideas all the time. I'm going to give you all this recommendation as well. If you are a creative person, in my notes app, pinned to the top, it's actually the first one up here. It's called Story and Book Ideas. And I'm far enough away that none of you can see this, so you won't see my ideas. But every single one of these lines is a different idea I haven't written about yet. And so sometimes I will be in the middle of a conversation and someone will say something, and I'll be like, stop. And my friends just know, they're like, oh God, Mark got an idea, okay. And then they stop talking, and then I write the thing down. And so sometimes it just comes to me where, and it can be, here's the thing though, and I'm gonna give you this recommendation too. If you are a person who gets ideas and finds that you forget them, not only write them down, but when I write them down, I write in the note where I was, what day it was, what I was thinking about beforehand, because I kind of want to recapture that idea, that whole vibe that I was in. Because one of these notes, I didn't do that. It just says, magical gay bar. I mean, let me write it. I don't know, but I don't know. Like, I came back to it later and was like, was I high? What did I mean by that? Like, so now because I did that, and I'm like, I bet that was a really good idea. I wish I'd written more. All my other ones are much more detailed. I do have one that is a single line, and I'm pretty sure I want to make it the title of a short story, and it's called "You're Not Gay If You Don't Have a Boyfriend." Sure, okay, I don't know what that was. Anyway, so yes, generally speaking, they are from my life, though every once in a while I'll be watching something or reading something, and consuming art will sometimes give me an idea of, I'll think of, well, what if this happened instead? But yes, generally speaking, they're from my life. All right, who's next? Right here.
When you first started writing, did you have a number of books that you wanted to produce?
Did I have a number of books that I wanted to produce?
You wanted to do like 30 books, or was there ever like...
Yeah, the number was 1, and I'm not being like jokey with you. It was just, if I can just have 1. So the fact that I now get to say 7, and I'm actually contracted for 9. Like at this point, there's 2 secret ones that I can't tell any of you about because that I will get fired for. But no, I didn't have a number. I think now as a writer, 50 sounds pretty cool. I want to keep going forever. Like I just want to keep going and keep doing this. I love it, and I feel very lucky that I get to do it, and I think I'm pretty good at it. But yeah, the goal was never multiple. It was always, let me just get 1. So even when that first book, when Anger's a Gift came out, my initial contract was for 2 books, and which was like, wow, I get to do 2. And I just was like, okay, well, if I get to do 2 and nothing ever happens again, I'll still feel pretty proud of myself. And then now I just don't sleep. It's great. It's awesome. Okay. All right. We're going to go way in the back next to the person in the yellow. I didn't mean to say that. Sorry. I forgot how to interact with humans. Like, go ahead. All right. I would lose that. I'm gonna throw that out there. So the question is, 1 billion lions. Do you know how much a billion is? That's so many lions. Like, that's. What? Hold on. I need some parameters. Win at what? A fight? Because like if we were going to talk about like win at looking good, Pokemon, duh, obviously. But win at a fight? I got to say Pokemon because they have powers that the lions don't. Oh, that's a personal argument that, oh, sorry. Oops, okay, sorry. I just ruined someone's life. All right, we're going to go over here. All right, anyone over here who has a question? Oh, right here, sorry. What do the X's on my hand mean? That I'm canceled. No, I canceled myself before any of you could do it. So, I'm going to throw out a term. You're probably not going to know what it is, so I'm going to then describe it. But I'm straight edge. Does anyone know what that is here? No way. Well, okay, you don't count. I mean, you do count. Sorry. I just told an adult they don't count. Great lesson to teach a bunch of kids. Okay. There was a movement in the early 80s in Washington, D.C. that started by a bunch of kids who were into punk rock and hardcore, coming of age in this world. I don't think they do it anymore, but if you went to a venue that sold alcohol, they would put an X on your hand if you were under 21, and it told the bartender you can't serve them. And so these kids who were very much into this music scene were very irritated and disappointed at how much drug and alcohol use there were at these shows they would go to because they just wanted to enjoy the show, and they couldn't because people were drunk or strung out or whatnot. So they would show up to the shows with the X already on the back of their hand. It became this movement called straight edge, pioneered by a few bands like Teen Idols, who then turned into Minor Threat. It became a movement that at sometimes got really hardline and kind of gross, and I don't really subscribe to some of the more extreme things, but I have been sober for 20 years now. I used to drink alcohol, I don't, and I became straight edge as sort of a way to control my own life. And so I got these on my 21st birthday because there's a whole in-joke in the community that when straight edge kids turn 21, they're like, oh, I can drink, so now I'm gonna drink. And I didn't. I was very serious about sobriety, so they're a marker of sobriety, basically. Thank you. I'm so proud of my canceled joke, by the way. All right, okay. Okay, way in the back. What's the most important lesson that I think I've learned from life? People who don't like mint chocolate chip ice cream are wrong. And wrong! You're all wrong. I'm going to cancel all of you. Give me your hands. I'll put X's on. I don't care. All right. Most important lesson. I think my important lesson is there is no replacement for being authentically yourself. The end. Period. Like, there's just none. And I say that as someone who spent most of my teenage years in the closet, afraid of being myself. And that's why I talk about like how much of a giant bookworm, how quiet and shy and terrified I was as a kid. Not super recently, it was like right before the pandemic, I had lunch with my friend Pilar. She is my only friend that I have maintained a close relationship from middle school. And whenever we hang out, she's like, I just cannot believe who you are as a person now because I got to see who you used to be. And I think about that and think about how much happier I am. Even while the world's on fire, I still get to be authentically me, and there's just no replacement in the world for it. It's a good question. All right, we're going to go in the middle. One more question? Please don't ask about lions and Pokemon. We're going to go right here. Okay. I loved it. I'm kidding. Yes?
Percy Jackson and the Olympians or Heroes of Olympus?
You do want me to get fired. Okay. Mark, pick your favorite of Rick Riordan's children. Okay, man, I really like the new characters, like Jason and Hazel and all of them.
Why do you like Jason though?
What's that?
He's so boring. Jason. I don't like Jason. I'm so sorry.
Mark's gonna fight a child. Okay, I have reasons for liking them that I can't tell you. And okay, all right, that's all I'm gonna say. I like them because, and the reasons I will say Heroes of Olympus is I think Rick could have ended the series at The Last Olympian and never written another Percy Jackson book. And I think the hardest thing in the world was for him to decide, how am I ever going to continue these books and make them interesting? And I think some of the most interesting stuff is in that next 5 books. I think, what's it called? Mark of a thing? That's one of them. House of Hades? I think House of Hades is actually my favorite Percy Jackson book of all 15. I think that's my genuine favorite book because I think that was the first book where he was able to do dark the whole time. Like dark in a way that didn't like shy away from how messed up that was. And that book is very influential on the one that I wrote. Like very, very, very influential. So, wow, she's canceling me in her head. I can see it right now. That's my answer though. We don't have any more time, but I'm still gonna call him. Okay. Yes, in the blue. Is each of us a desert sapphic? A great term that you should all think about and learn what it is. What do you think? Look at that gay-ass cover. Yeah, of course. And I'm very upfront about that. Extremely. Like so much, one of my friends, I think one of the best reviews I ever got was from a book blogger who said, "Is Mark a repressed lesbian?" when they read this, because they were like, "You captured that vibe so intensely, I don't understand how you did that." So yes, very. Are you kidding? I think the question should always be, is anything Mark writes queer? Yes, it is. Okay, thank you. Y'all the best. Please don't fight children.
Thank you.